just want to talk about the blog in general, really. Like how did it start? Robscene.com.
Well, I'm a film studies teacher. That's what I do. That's my day job. So it started. Do you know? I actually started writing film reviews because people would say to me, "Have you seen this film?" And I'd be like, "I can't. I think so. I can't remember." So it was a way to kind of keep track of that. And then, my first love was music, really. So it branched out into live reviews, a few other kind of album reviews as well. But then that got me, as I say, writing for there was a website called Gig Junkies, which is now defunct, but I did some stuff for them. Total Entertainment, who I write for now. So yeah, I love live music, love going to see live music. So I'm always on the lookout for new gigs and stuff like that. So I don't get paid for any of it, but it's
Right.
nice to get free tickets from time to time. So yeah. There's no adverts or anything on my site. So if people looking for just a general pop culture website, then come and take a look.
No, I've been really enjoying it today, mate. It's been a good read. It's interested in the tram lines when he went. Did he go all 3 days?
Yeah.
And he said it's like the worst weather he'd ever experienced at a festival, maybe.
Oh, the Sunday, yeah. I mean, Friday and Saturday were all right, but the Sunday was, and I've been to, I've been to Leeds Fest 10. I've camped at Leeds Fest 9 times, so I've seen my fair share of bad weather. But Jesus Christ, it was Paul Heaton, the last act that was on. It was great, but literally, I had walking boots on, and the mud was going. It was above my ankles, like it was just seeping in. But at that point, it's like, well, my feet are wet now, so might as well just try and enjoy it. But tram lines, I can't speak highly enough of tram lines. Again, in terms of organisation, that is top notch, really good.
Yeah, I've heard it's a great festival. I've not actually been myself, but I'll have to go one year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. It is. It's quality. I mean, the lineup is they're running out of kind of Britpop legends to headline. They're kind of cycling through the same kind of people. It'd be nice to diversify it up a little bit, but yeah, it's I go every year because it's just a short train ride for me, and then yeah, very very good.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. And then yeah, I was enjoying some of the other stuff like the book reviews, um, like John Cooper Clarke. Is that one you'd recommend?
Yeah, that he has lived a life. That guy. So the kind of punk poet who got in with all the punk bands in the '70s. He's on a Joy Division track. Obviously, the Arctics. I want to be yours is one of his poems translated into a song. But yeah, he's very frank about his heroin use. Thankfully, he's over that now. But it's hearing some of the stories of like him being up for 48 hours straight and then just going straight off to do a gig somewhere. He's just or appear on television, even that kind of stuff. It's insane. He has lived some life. It's a good read. That I'd recommend it.
Another one, Uncommon People, about the death of rock stars or something. Not the death, but
Yeah,
something
that's
like
what's that guy? I can't remember his name. That guy wrote that. David something. But
that. Hampton, is it?
yes, that's it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he's done a bunch of music books, and they're all really good. That one is like it kind of takes you through the evolution of kind of the rock and roll singer and kind of how it's changed from the 60s and 70s, the hell raising days to up to kind of the 90s and the 2000s. And there's a big kind of feeling of you won't get away now with what we're going on in the kind of 60s and 70s. But he's looking at it in a serious way. It's not all kind of winks and nods. It is like they shouldn't have been doing some of that stuff. But as a starting point, a lot of it was stuff I'd heard before, but it collects it all in one place. So I'd say for someone who's kind of just getting into kind of rock and roll, it's a really, really good starting point in that respect.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that point where it's like you wouldn't get people like I can't remember the examples, maybe like Robert Plant and others, because they'd be too busy apologizing for their antics.
Yeah,
And
exactly that.
maybe that's why we're not getting, I don't know, there seems to be a bit of a gap maybe for like rock and roll bands these days, maybe, or maybe that's why we don't get them as much. I don't know.
I totally agree. I think it's also a bit of a class thing as well. I think the setup isn't there for someone like Robert Plant, who I think was from Wolverhampton. But people from these kind of working class northern industrial towns. I don't think the infrastructure is there anymore. I don't, buying instruments, touring with instruments, practice spaces, all that stuff is so expensive. It feels a little bit now like even in like rock and roll and indie music, which traditionally has been more working class, it does feel like it's becoming the preserve of kind of, you know, middle upper class. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being middle class or upper class, of course, but it'd be nice to have more working class voices. And I do think that is where rock and roll is suffering. I don't think since like, you know, Arctic Monkeys, a lot of those bands from, you know, the pod covers, a lot of those were like working class bands, and it feels like since that era, there's not as many examples out there. So I think that's why people cling on to, you know, why the Raytons and, you know, Cortinas have huge success, because they're kind of flying the flag, and there's not much else around in that regard.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to criticize any new bands, but it feels like the bar's maybe a bit lower.
Yeah,
For some of these bands getting quite big.
I totally agree. I was kind of, yeah, without criticizing anyone, that's what I was kind of alluding to. I think there's a lot of bands who, had they have come out in the you know, kind of 90s or the not, I don't want to say noughties, but in the era that you cover, I don't think they wouldn't even have been heard of. You know what I mean? Because there was so much great stuff around. Fair play to them, you know, good on them. But it does feel a bit kind of bit of a wasteland at the minute in that respect, which is sad.
Mm.
But, I mean, look at festival lineups, headliners in indie festivals. It's all guys from 20 years ago. You know, it's Tramlines this year, Richard Ashcroft, Paul Heaton, Cortinas. Cortinas are 20 years old now. So where are the new kind of, you know, indie rock bands coming through? That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I was saying that to someone recently. Like, who now would you think is going to be like headlining stadiums in 20 years?
Mm.
Like, it's hard to see who's going to get to that point, but I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hopefully, someone.
Yeah. And you mentioned Monkeys, like read a review of the Hillsborough Park gig. And maybe that you're not a major fan of the new stuff, is that right?
Um, I prefer the earlier stuff, but I'm not one of these people who's like really demonizes the new stuff. And, you know, bands have to evolve, you know, and the best bands, the bands that stay around for a long time, like Radiohead, for example, or someone like that, they do so because they are able to kind of adapt and change. I think the last two albums, The Car and Tranquility Base, for me, there's like three or four songs that I really love on each of those albums, but then a bunch of stuff that it's just not for me. I respect the direction they've gone in because it's nice. They're clearly not doing it for commercial reasons. It's not commercial music they're making. It's experimental kind of avant-garde music in a lot of cases, which I've got a lot of time for. Um, but yeah, it's not really for me, and I think that's reflected in the fact that, well, the public perception of it is reflected in the fact that that gig at Hillsborough Park, I think they only played 4 songs or something like that off The Car, which tells me that they kind of realise this is not music for the masses, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, you said you missed the Hives or something that day. Did they play a certain Romance first as well? Or was that a different gig?
They not first, but they did play it.
Ah, okay, all right.
I think they played Brainstorm first. I'll be honest, I'd seen Sam Fender the day before.
Yeah, I was reading it.
Yeah, at St James's Park. So I was a bit worse for wear for the Arctics gig. It had been a long weekend by that point. So yeah, I think they started with Brainstorm, but don't quote me on that. But it was nice to hear some of the older stuff. Definitely, yeah, it was lovely to hear that.
Then yeah, I was interested in the XFM review because I've been wanting to see that film or the documentary. But you said it was kind of a bit I don't know. You said it wasn't great kind of thing.
I mean, the thing is, I never listened to XFM back in the day, so I'm not the target audience for that. If you're someone who loved listening to it back in the day, you probably get a lot more out of it. For me, it was just a bit of a buff piece. It was just a bit kind of too celebratory, and it felt like a promo rather than a kind of serious documentary, if you know what I mean. It's decent though, like it's entertaining, but as I say, it's probably not I'm probably not the right demographic for that. You know, I'll just devour anything music wise, which is what brought me to it. But if you listen to it back in the day, I'm sure you get a lot more out of it. To be fair,
The XFM stuff with Ricky Gervais and Pilkington, that's my only real into it. But it's on like I can't remember what platform it's on. Is it? You have to pay to watch it, though, I think.
yeah, I can't remember.
But But yeah, I might watch that, I think. But yeah, what I was going to say about Monkeys is we had Danny on who talked about the gig, the Strokes gig on Friday. But he was saying like he lives in Sheffield and he reckons there's rumours going around that it could be the last album. I just wondered if you'd heard anything like that.
What for the Arctics?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything like that. I mean, it feels like the thing is, I'm not convinced that the other people in the band are as into the music they're making as Alex Turner is. It feels like it's kind of becoming more and more almost like a solo project. Now, I'm not basing that on anything other than my own kind of hunch. Do you know what I mean? I don't know anything around that, but it does feel like they're kind of going in that direction. And the fact that it takes them so long to release an album, the car's only 10 tracks. It's like half, it's barely open. It's 34 minutes, 35 minutes, something like that. So, and it's taken them a long time to release it, which tells me like they're not itching to get back into the studio and work together. I don't know if you saw. What did you think of the Glastonbury set? Did you watch it?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it because I do really, I like the new stuff, but it felt like there's something missing from it. Like they weren't, it
Yeah.
felt like another gig for them, didn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Exactly that. Yeah, I didn't understand the huge criticism, all the stuff about his accent and stuff. I'm like, also people say no, I don't interact with the crowd. It's like, yeah, have you ever been to an Arctic Monkeys gig? He's never ever done that. I don't know what you're expecting, but it just felt a bit flat. They were better at Elizabeth Park, I thought. But I mean, I tell you, Sculptures of Anything Goes. I love that song,
Yeah.
but you can't be opening Glastonbury with that. It's can't. You've got to give some kind of reverence to the occasion. And yeah, I look at him and I just think, in back to your question about will the next one be the last one or will the car be the last one? I look at him and just think, is that a band who are really do they love being in the Arctic Monkeys? And I'm not sure. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, and the impression I get like they've absolutely hammered this tour, like so many gigs.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of gives the impression like they're gonna go on a massive break or do something else, I reckon. But
Yeah, well, that's normally what they do, isn't it? Like a big hiatus,
hmm.
maybe another Last Shadow Puppets album or something. I don't know. They don't seem to do anything outside of the others. I know Matt Elders does some producing and stuff. He did that Good Cop Bad Cop album, but they don't seem to do much outside of being in Arctics, do they? So
Yeah, not really. What else has Helder's doing recently? He was on I think he was on Albert Hammond's album and stuff. I think he like guests on different stuff, didn't he?
yeah, he
But
did the
nothing like
Iggy Pop album, did he as well? He did that a few years ago.
yeah, yeah. And he's in some mad band. Was he in another band with like Josh Homme and or was that something else? I don't know.
Yeah, that rings a bell. I mean, pretty much everyone's been in the band with Josh Homme, haven't they, at some point? So.
Yeah, yeah. And then in terms of, I saw you've been actually interviewing people, like you've interviewed Ian Brody and stuff. Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, great. So there's in Doncaster there's a kind of online publication called Doncapolitan, which is just like covers like cultural stuff in Donny. So because we have Askenfest in Doncaster, which is like an annual music festival, that was headline. It was there this year. Razorlight headlined it this year. But we often get through Doncapolitan because they kind of sponsor the event a little bit. We interview people who are going to play at that. So that year when Ian Brody was there, that was really nice because I think I spoke to Chris Helm as well from the Seahorses. I spoke to Nigel Clark from Dodgy, but then he pulled out of the festival, so that one didn't get published. And Mark Morris from the Blue Tones as well. I spoke to all of those guys. So what was nice about that was being able to kind of ask them all similar questions and see how they answered them differently. So it was nice to be able to say to Ian Brody, like, "Oh, what's it like seeing people like Mark Morris backstage?" And or, you know, and it was the way they spoke about the kind of camaraderie they have and how that time really felt like a real movement and togetherness and unity and all that stuff. That was really nice. It was great. All great. Ian Brody's a lovely guy. All of them, all the guys I spoke to, really nice. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Is that kind of your era then, like the Britpop thing, along with the Nazis?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm 36, but I was an early starter in terms of music. So the 90s was the first time when I was kind of buying my own music. So Oasis were my first love, but then Blur, Pulp, and Suede, all those kind of bands. That kind of got me into music. But then I was a teenager. Well, I was like 17, 18 during the era that you cover. So that's kind of more, linked to that kind of Proustian rush, the memories of that time. If I hear Take Me Out by Franz Ferdinand or whatever, it takes me back straight away to being in Bondi Beach nightclub in Leeds. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. But yeah, the '90s. It all comes back to the '90s for me. I've become a bit obsessed with it in recent times. I'm like drowning in nostalgia all the time. Like, but yeah, that's definitely my kind of era.
Was that where you were during the noughties then in Leeds?
So I was running a pub when I was 18, which is insane. Should never have
Really?
happened. Yeah, yeah. I
That's
was
mad.
living I was living above and managing a pub for I did that for 3 years. All my mates were at uni in Leeds though. So Monday was the student night in Leeds. I finished work at 6 o'clock on a Sunday and I wasn't back till 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. So every Sunday and Monday I'd go to Leeds.
Okay.
Go out in Leeds. So saw loads of gigs in that time at the cockpit, RIP, and the academy and the refectory and all that stuff. But it was great because I kind of got the taste of the uni lifestyle without the bad bits. I just got the going out parts and stuff. So it was really exciting time to be like an 18-year-old that time. The amount of bands that we saw. You didn't realize how lucky you were, really. Seeing Libertines one week, and even back the kind of lesser known bands. Like I loved Ordinary Boys at the time, and Boy Kill Boy, all those kind of Holloways, all that stuff. Loved all that. It was genuinely exciting. I feel sorry for kind of kids who like the kind of music that we like, who are at uni now, and I just feel like what kind of experience are they getting? I'm sure that they're probably having a great time, and we're just old men shouting at clouds, but it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, yeah. So how was this pub that you ran? Was it in Doncaster?
It was, yeah, the Tut and Shive in Doncaster, which used to be a big music pub at the time, but it's kind of a shadow of its former self now. I'm sorry to say, but yeah, it was a great era to work there.
Okay, and were you putting bands on or stuff like that?
We did, it's quite a small pub, so we had DJs on. Like I used to DJ on a Tuesday night, and then we had another DJ on a Sunday. It was like a more classic rock thing. We occasionally had bands on, but it wasn't really suited for live music so much. We never had anyone kind of significant on. It was more kind of acoustic stuff because that suited the size of the venue better.
Okay, and how long were you doing that for?
So I did it. I had 3 years there, and then left, and then went back for another 3 years. So I did 6 years in total, but in like an 8-year period.
Okay, and how did you get into that when you're 18?
I literally started off as a glass collector when I was 17. Um, the thing is, pubs are like there's other jobs like call centers or supermarkets. Most people who work in those places are working there, until they find something else. Do you know what I mean? So if you want to if you think right, I want to manage a pub, and you go into it with that mindset, you can move up really, really quickly. So yeah, before my 19th birthday, I was living above the pub. There was like a landlord, but I was like managing it. He didn't live there. He was just kind of more an overseer. Um, but yeah, I mean, it shouldn't have been allowed to happen still. There's no way I should have had that responsibility at that age, but I definitely made the most of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you're 18, it's quite there must be a lot of temptation. Blimey.
We had some wonderful, wonderful lock-ins, I will say. Looked back on very fondly by many people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you say you're doing now? Is it media and film you're teaching in?
Yeah, so I teach English and film studies, yeah.
Right, okay. So what point did he get into that and how did he get into that?
It was when I met my wife. So it was 10 years ago, actually. So when I was 26, she worked Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So that, just wasn't compatible. We never saw each other because I was working weekends at the pub all the time and evenings and stuff. So we realised that wasn't going to work. She'd moved to Doncaster from London as well, so that was her kind of sacrifice. So I thought, well, I should, should probably do something as well. So I left the pub game. I've always loved kind of writing in my spare time and reading and stuff and literature. So I've got a mate who's a teacher, and he said, well, why don't you, do teaching, be a teaching assistant, see if you like being in the classroom and stuff, and go from there. So that was 8 years ago now, and I've just started as a teaching assistant, then did my teaching degree, and then I just taught English at first. But when the opportunity came up to teach film, I kind of made that opportunity happen. I was pushing for it for ages. So now I'm like 50-50 English and film.
Okay, and is that like a secondary school?
Yeah, so that's Hall Cross in Doncaster. It's a secondary school and a sixth form.
Ah, nice one, mate. So is what you can do without university.
Yeah. I mean, I ended up I did a degree, but through Open University.
Okay, all right.
I did that while I was like a teaching assistant. So yeah, no regrets about I was having a better time running a pub than I would have been at uni. So I'm
Okay, nice. So, and then just want to finish on like, is there one band or artist that is out there that you haven't seen that you'd want to see?
oh, that is a great question. Um, I'd really like to see. I've not seen Yard Act yet. I'd really like to get to see them because I really like them. In terms of kind of the more pie in the sky stuff, I love Tom Waits, and it's my dream to see Tom Waits, but it's not going to happen now because he's not toured in like 15 years. But that'd be like the big one for me. The bands of like our era, I think I've seen all of them numerous times. Do you know what I mean? Like attending festivals and stuff. So yeah, there's no one who really stands out really.